I think a lot of us quietly believe motherhood would make recovery easier, that loving our children so much would somehow make the struggle disappear. And when that didn't happen, the shame felt enormous. Hi, friend. I'm really glad that you're here. And before we go anywhere else, I just want to invite you to take one breath with me, not a deep, perfect breath, not a breath that has to change anything, just a small pause, a moment to let your shoulders drop a little, a moment to let yourself arrive. Because if you are listening to this while folding laundry or driving or nursing a baby, sitting in the car before going back inside, or just trying to find one quiet pocket in the middle of a very full day, I want you to know that you don't have to do anything perfectly here. You don't have to have the right words. You don't have to be in crisis. You don't have to prove that this is hard enough. You can just listen and maybe let yourself be met here. Over the past few weeks, I've been writing about this part of recovery that so often stays hidden. The part where we look okay from the outside. We're caring for our children, we're making the meals, packing the snacks, getting everyone where they need to go, keeping track of the appointments, the shoes, the sunscreen, the water bottles, and all the tiny details that somehow make up a whole family life. And yet inside, something still feels loud. Food may still feel loud. Body image may still feel loud. The old thoughts may still come in. Those old patterns may still pull. And the shame may still rise after a hard moment. And one of the things I keep hearing from mothers is some version of, I thought I was the only one, or I thought I should be past this by now, or I thought becoming a mother would make recovery easier. And I understand that so deeply because I think many of us carried some version of that belief. Maybe we didn't say it out loud. Maybe we didn't even fully realize we believed it, but somewhere inside, there was this hope that motherhood would change everything, that having a child would give us a reason big enough to finally stop struggling, that loving someone so much would make the eating disorder quieter, that once there was a baby or a child or family depending on us, we would finally be able to lay it all down because now there was something bigger than us, someone who needed us, someone we loved more than anything. And surely that should be enough. Surely that love should be enough to make recovery easier. Surely wanting to protect our children from food shame and body shame should make the old patterns lose their power. Surely, if we loved them enough, we would just be able to do this. And when that doesn't happen, when motherhood does not magically quiet the eating disorder voice, when pregnancy or postpartum or feeding our children or watching their bodies grow actually makes recovery feel more complicated, the shame can feel enormous because then the question becomes, why isn't my love enough? Why am I still struggling? Why is this still here? What does this say about me as a mother? And that is such a painful place to be because the struggle itself is already hard. But then there's the meaning that we make about the struggle. Like maybe this means I'm selfish. Maybe this means I'm failing. Maybe this means I don't care enough. Maybe this means I'm not strong enough in my recovery, or that I'm going to pass this on, or that I'm already hurting my children. And when shame starts telling that story, most of us don't reach out. We hide, we get quieter, we figure out how to keep functioning, we try harder. We read more, we gather more information, we scroll more. We tell ourselves we should be able to figure it out. And so many mothers end up carrying this very privately, not because they don't want help and not because they don't care, but because the shame around needing help in motherhood can feel so tender. And today, in this first audio, I want to gently name something that I hope gives you even a small exhale. Motherhood does not always make recovery quieter. In fact, sometimes motherhood makes recovery louder or more challenging. And that doesn't mean you're failing. It may simply mean that motherhood is touching places in you that still need care. Pregnancy can make recovery more challenging because suddenly your body is changing in ways you can't fully control. Your appetite may change, your hunger may feel different, your body may become more visible. People may start commenting on your size, your weight, your bump, your shape, what you're eating, what you're not eating. It's a lot. And appointments may include numbers that you wish you have to see. All of this can stir the parts of us that learned a long time ago that food and body were places where safety, control, approval, or worth got negotiated. Postpartum, definitely very similar in that it can make recovery more challenging for many different reasons. Our body starts changing again. Our hunger may feel intense. Our sleep may be fragmented. Our identity may feel unrecognizable. You may be feeding a baby while struggling to feed yourself. You might feel pressure around breastfeeding, supply, weight loss, bouncing back, or looking like yourself again. People may compliment weight loss that came from stress, depletion, anxiety, or even relapse. And something inside can feel confused because the world may praise the very thing that is harming us. Motherhood can make recovery more challenging because our kids need to eat many times a day. And suddenly, food is everywhere: snacks, meals, lunch boxes, the grocery lists, the birthday parties, picky eating, dessert requests, second helpings, refused dinners, pantry moments, our child's appetite or their body, or our kids' comments about food or other people's comments about our kids. You may find yourself trying so hard to create a peaceful food environment for your children while internally feeling anything but peaceful. You might say all the right things out loud while something inside you is bracing. You may offer your child permission around food while noticing your own fear rise. You may want so badly to trust their bodies while still struggling to trust your own. And that gap can feel excruciating. The gap between what we know and what we feel. The gap between the mother we want to be and the parts of us still trying to protect. The gap between our values and our nervous system. And that gap is where so much shame can live. But what if we understood that gap differently? What if motherhood is not exposing failure? What if motherhood is revealing what still needs support? What if louder moments are not evidence that we are broken, but signs that something tender is being touched, something old, something protective, something that learned at some point that control might keep us safe? Because eating disorders do not usually develop in a vacuum. For many of us, food and body became a way to manage pain or uncertainty or overwhelm or fear or rejection, invisibility or a lack of safety. Maybe food and body became a place where we could feel some sense of control. Maybe restriction helped us feel powerful when we felt powerless. Maybe binging helped us soothe something we didn't know how to name. Maybe exercise helped us discharge anxiety. Maybe body checking gave us a temporary sense of certainty. Maybe food rules made the world feel less chaotic. And even when we have done so much healing, even when we know better, even when we want something different, motherhood can activate those old protective pathways because motherhood is full of vulnerability. It brings stress. Yes, so much love, but it also brings exposure, responsibility, sleeplessness, noise, so much noise, need, body changes, identity shifts, loss of control, invisible labor, the ache of wanting to do everything right for people we love more than anything. And for a nervous system that once learned to cope through food, body, or control, of course that can get stirred here. Of course, pregnancy can touch it. Of course, postpartum can touch it. Of course, feeding our children can touch it, or watching our children grow, or hearing comments from pediatricians or relatives or coaches, teachers, or even just straight up strangers can follow us home and live in our bodies. And of course, this can feel complicated, not because we are bad mothers, not because we're not trying, and not because we don't love our children enough, but because motherhood brings our deepest love into contact with some of our deepest wounds. And I wonder if that is part of why it can feel so frightening, because the stakes feel so high. It's one thing to struggle privately. It's another thing to struggle while loving a child who is watching, learning, needing, growing. It's another thing to feel activated by food while trying to feed someone else without shame. It's another thing to hear an old thought in your mind and immediately fear what it could mean for your child. That fear makes sense. And also, fear is not the same thing as truth. The fact that you're worried about passing this on doesn't mean you already have. The fact that something gets activated in you doesn't mean you're unsafe. The fact that you still struggle doesn't mean your love isn't real. The fact that recovery feels louder in motherhood or more challenging in motherhood doesn't mean you are failing. It may simply mean that this is a season asking for a kind of support that fits your real life now, not support that assumes you can step away from motherhood in order to heal, or support that ignores the school lunches and the baby feedings and the dinner table and the body comments and the sheer bedtime exhaustion. Not support that treats recovery like something separate from the actual life you are living, but support that understands the overlap. Support that understands that the trigger may happen while you're making dinner, or while your child asks for more food, or while your body is changing postpartum, or while you're sitting in a pediatrician's office, or while everyone else is asleep and the house is finally quiet. Support that understands that motherhood and recovery are not happening in separate rooms. They are happening in the same body, same kitchen, same mornings, same nervous system, same heart. And I think this is where many mothers in recovery start to soften, not because everything suddenly gets easy, but because we stop interpreting every hard moment as proof that we're failing. We can start to ask different questions. Instead of, why am I still like this? We can ask, what got touched in me? Instead of asking, why can't I just stop? We can ask, what is this part of me trying to protect? Instead of, what's wrong with me? We can ask, what kind of support would help me feel less alone here? That shift matters because shame is what keeps us hiding, and hiding keeps us carrying this alone. But compassion can create a little more space, space to notice, space to repair, space to come back, space to practice, space to receive support before we reach a breaking point. And we're going to keep walking toward that together in this audio series, not by forcing ourselves to try harder, not by shaming ourselves into doing better, but by learning how to understand what gets activated, what it may be protecting, and what kind of support helps us come back. So, if motherhood has made recovery more challenging for you, or if you feel like your eating disorder has become louder since you've become a mother or in your motherhood journey, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not the only one, my friend. You're not weak because this part of you still gets activated. You're not failing because your love for your children didn't magically erase the struggle. You're not a bad mother because you're still healing. You are allowed to be in process while raising your children. You are allowed to need support in the messy middle. You're allowed to have parts of you that still feel scared. You're allowed to want something different and still need help getting there. Motherhood may make recovery more challenging or your eating disorder more loud, but it can also become a place where healing becomes more honest, not perfect, not instant, not without hard moments, but more honest, more integrated, more compassionate, more connected. Because maybe the goal isn't to prove we can do this alone. Maybe the goal is to stop having to. In the next audio, we're going to talk about why knowing better doesn't always help in the moment, especially when our bodies are already activated. But for today, I hope you can carry this with you. If recovery feels louder in motherhood, that doesn't mean you're broken. It means this part of you deserves care too. I'm here with you, and I will meet you in the next audio.